It was Christmas Eve, 1991. Not just any Christmas, though. Anticipation was in the air, and my mother handed me this big box of a present. I opened my present, and there it was, a Nintendo Entertainment System. My only memories of games before this was playing a text adventure on my father's job computer, and some football game on maybe an Amiga. I remember the TAC-2 joystick. But this Christmas present was to be the real kickoff to my gaming life. As soon as I saw that it was indeed a Nintendo in there, my child brain snapped and I ran up to the attic, crying. My mother went up after me, hugged me and asked why I was crying. Wasn't this what I wanted? My crying changed to the more appropriate cheer, and I said, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. The Nintendo also came bundled with my first game, Super Mario Bros. 3. I was playing it that very night. The colors, the movement. Then I picked up a leaf and watched in surprise as Mario got a tail. This was the beginning of many wonders. As I engrossed myself in the world of Mario, my mother too would have to adjust. One time when she called for dinner, I was playing Mario 3, and I yelled back, "Sure, I just gotta die first." She came running in, worried. I explained that I meant I had to die in the game. This was apparently also before I knew that pressing start pauses the game. I was afraid of stage 4 when I was a kid. The screen moved on its own. Platforms fell down into the abyss when I stepped on them. I rarely played it back then. I also used to play 2-player with my sister from time to time, and while I learned to play the game up to World 4, she got perpetually stuck on the first world's castle. She never quite learned proper use of the B button. That and fear of lava prevented her from going much further. During my Nintendo years, I would get these games to my collection. Tiger Heli, Gremlins 2, Tecmo World Wrestling, The Simpsons, Bart vs. the World, Shadowgate, and Anticipation. Super Mario Bros. 3 was my favorite game then, and now too actually. I enjoyed all my games to varying degrees, but Tiger Heli was the one I liked the least. The music, apart from the beginning, got on my nerves. And of course dying all the time also got to me. Gremlins 2 was also very hard, but much more fun. To this day I think this is one of the best movie licensed games. The graphics are great, and the music too. It had cinematic scenes like Ninja Gaiden, although maybe not as creative. I think the guy in the beginning looks like David Hasselhoff. Tecmo World Wrestling was fun, but I realize now it's mostly a button masher. I could rarely read Swedish back then, but I still enjoy the commentator, how he stood up sometimes when something interesting happened. Bart vs. the World I liked too, but I could never get past the first North Pole stage. I didn't realize back then how bad the controls were. But I still think that the Great Wall of China was a fun level. I never had that much trouble with the dragon. I just enjoyed going fast and jumping high. I got Shadowgate when I had asked for that and Solstice, which both had a special deal getting sold together. The company selling them were out of Solstice, but I did get Shadowgate, the Swedish version. Today I find it really odd that there existed a Swedish version at all. I remember not getting very far, and getting very scared of the game. The Banshee, the Fire Dragon you can only see the eyes of, and the Grim Reaper that you get to see each time you die. Later on, when I rediscovered Nintendo games on emulator, I beat Shadowgate, and now I know it inside and out. Ask me anytime, and I can tell you each step you take through it. To this day, I've never played Solstice. Anticipation was the last game I got. I think my mother may have gotten persuaded by the wholesome cover. Actually, my mother bought me all my games growing up. Anyway, Anticipation was a hard game to play back then since it was in English. But later on I grew an appreciation for it. It's Pictionary, and it's fun. The neighbor kid, my best friend at the time, also had a Nintendo. His parents had a lot of money, I suppose, because he had many games. He had Super Mario 1 and 2, Ice Hockey, Blades of Steel, Nintendo World Cup, Ice Climber, Castlevania, Metroid, Turtles 2, Duck Hunt, Tetris, Zelda 1. That gold cartridge immediately caught my eye, and it felt legendary just putting it in my Nintendo. I also remember being mystified at a blue candle? What in the world? We had some great fun with Nintendo World Cup, and as I recall he did have an NES satellite. But we could never find 2 more friends to play with. The other neighbor kids were jerks, as I recall, and didn't have any good NES games either. One of them had Knight Rider, which looked cool until I tried it. The 2 games I ended up borrowing from him the most, apart from Mario 1 and 2 of course, was Mega Man and Mega Man 2. Mega Man was great, but Mega Man 2 became the game I wished I had myself the most. I borrowed it from him many times. I thought it was so cool how you could use the weapons that the bosses used, and how Mega Man changed color with each new weapon. Speaking of the colors, I remember thinking that the pink while using Quickman's weapon was girly, especially since Quickman was the coolest of the Robot Masters. And I wanted Crashman's weapons colors to be red, not light pink. Too bad red was reserved for the items. And like everyone else, I thought the Metal Blade was the best weapon. There's just no debate there. I still remember the password to Dr. Wily's castle to this day. A5, B2, B4, C1, C3, C5, D4, D5, E2. I remember Wily waggling his eyebrows, his skull castle, getting so scared of the robot dragon that I always fell off the platforms. The neighbor kid eventually got Mega Man 3 too, but I didn't get to play it much. Shortly thereafter he moved away to his father, who apparently had a Super Nintendo. I was jealous. About Mega Man 3, I remember thinking Top Man had to be the most difficult boss, since he was the top man. Little did I know that he's actually the easiest. The neighbor kid didn't have Super Mario Bros. 3 though, which gave me one little advantage, and a reason for him to come over to my house every once in a while. One time when he came over, to play football actually, I was trying to beat the ship level in World 8, and I kept dying. I refused to give up though, and I had plenty of lives. So I kept telling him to wait, and that I just have to finish this level first. Time passed, and before I knew it, he had to go home. It was getting late, and I still hadn't beaten that level. I felt bad for neglecting him for quite some time afterwards. Another story relating to Mario 3 was when I got to take over the family's TV set because we'd bought a new one. I went from playing on a 14-inch to a 28-inch. It was massive, and I immediately brought a bunch of kids over to watch me and my friend play Mario 3. But after only a couple of hours, the TV began to flicker, then make noises, then it shut off. It was broken. Happiness is fleeting. The following Christmas I got a Game Boy and Super Mario Land. A great game, and it introduced me to that lovely tune, Can Can. Later I got to buy another game for it, and I remember being at the toy store and choosing between Alleyway and Quirk. I ended up choosing Quirk, which would be my only other Game Boy game for years and years. Quirk is a decent game. Quirk, he's amazing. The only other game I played on Game Boy back in the day was Tetris, that I borrowed from someone, I don't remember who. Me and my sister used to play it and beat each other's high score with each play session. Classic game. I still have my old Game Boy, which is more than I could say about my Nintendo, unfortunately. In 1994 my parents divorced and my Nintendo started malfunctioning, glitching and sometimes refusing to start. The last game I played on it was Panic Restaurant that I borrowed from a classmate, who had since turned to computers. I was about to do that myself. Anyway, I left my Nintendo at my father's house, and then I forgot about it while I moved on to other things. And some years later, my father moved to another city. Years later, I asked him about where my Nintendo was, and he said, kind of vaguely, that it must have gotten lost in the move. Right. Most likely he threw it away, thinking I don't play with it anymore. It feels quite sad today that I'll never see it again. I could buy another one any day, but it wouldn't be the same. So, that was the first section of my gaming life, 1991 to 1994, which I call the NES age. As you might have guessed by now, I remember it fondly. And I still like the side-scrolling platformers and Mario games the most. It's also funny how my very first game also became my all-time favorite. Christmas Eve 2011 is my 20th anniversary in gaming. Can you guess which game I'll be playing?